Hello, my name is VoxelMods, and today I'm going to be showing you how to sleeve a USB cable using MDPC-X and Techflex. Some things that you're going to need before we can get started is a pair of very sharp scissors, a pair of flush cutters, a lighter, preferably with an extended nose, that way you don't have as great a risk of burning yourself, and some very fine tweezers. Some expendable materials that you'll need for this job is clear 1/4 inch heat shrink. This will be used in at least 8 different places per cable. So we're going to get started, and we're going to start with our pre-cut length of USB 2.0 certified 4-core USB cable. Now for my purposes, I know the exact lengths that I like to use when I make my cables. So I know that for a 6-inch coil using a 1/2 inch diameter rod, that I'm going to want between 64 and 65 inches. It'll vary based on your coiling technique, based on the diameter of the rod you use, based on how much length you like to use for your device and detachable leads. So it's hard to give a firm, this number will work with everything, but I recommend doing some experimentation, and if you need to, you can always make your coil a little bit longer and then trim the excess later. So, we've got our cable. What else do we need? We need our MDPC-X. Now today we're going to be using Grand Blue, which is a lovely navy color. And to get started, we're going to unspool 5 or 6 feet of it, just so that we're not fighting the actual roll of sleeve. Now, if you take your lighter and just lightly melt the end, this will seal those filament strands together, making it so that it won't fray. And this is essential for later on because we want to be able to put heat shrink over the sleeve and the cable without issue. Okay, now that we're ready to start sleeving, you take one end of your USB cable and you just push it right into the sleeve. And I'm just making sure that my hands are on camera. And so this is kind of how you want to position your hands. You have 3 fingers supporting the USB cable, you have 3 fingers supporting the sleeve, and then you have your index and thumb fingers available to pinch. And so what you're going to do is grip with these fingers and slide with the other hand, and then maintaining your grip back here so that you're not losing control. And then you just work your way, and the other hand, your left hand, will be smoothing the sleeve as it is sleeved on. So you just, and then when you get, I'm showing the camera, but you actually want to have more of a position like this. And then once you get started, it can be real fast. And then every once in a while, you'll want to stretch the sleeve. And as you can see, we've already made it the majority of the way across the cable. And then we're just going to finish that up with a handful more. Just bringing the sleeve back and forth as needed to stretch it out. As you can see, the sleeve wants to expand and goes over. Okay, so we've gone far over, probably 6 inches. What we're going to do is just do the same thing and bring it back the other direction. And then what we're going to do is bring it so that we can see 1 inch of bare USB cable. We'll pinch and then stretch tightly across the entire length using full grip force and really trying to stretch that sleeve out. And then you're gonna feel for where the end of the USB cable is. When it's just sleeve, it'll be much softer, so you'll be able to tell pretty easily, even on dark sleeve colors. Then just give it a clean cut with your sharp scissors, and then once again just lightly hit it with the flame to seal those strands together. Slide 1/2 an inch over. Note that that's half the amount that we exposed earlier, so if you wanted more soldering room, you could factor in 1.5 inches in the first step and then 3/4 of an inch. That's if you need extra room, but I personally find that 1/2 an inch trimmed later works best. Now we've got both ends exposed and we've got our sleeve tight across the middle. The next step is to take a piece of heat shrink and slide it over both the cable and the sleeve. And then we're going to take our lighter and using the blue part of the flame, because that'll produce the least amount of soot, slowly rotate and use the flame to melt the sleeve to the USB cable without going too far. We only want about 1/8 of an inch melted. It doesn't need to be more than that. And then use your sharp scissors or flush cutters to make an incision in the heat shrink and then just pull it off. It'll often come off in 2 pieces, and then you can just pull off the other piece. Doesn't happen. Then we'll stretch the sleeve across the cable, and add another piece of heat shrink. We'll burn using the blue part of the flame, and we're just watching through the clear heat shrink as the sleeve melts together and forms a little plastic ring. Next, we'll make that cut and then take it right off. And there we go. That's what I mean about coming off in 2 pieces. Now that we've got this on there, we're ready to move to Techflex. Now I've got my Techflex over on spools to my right, so I have pretty easy access to it. You may be working with a smaller length that's more bundled, so make sure to unspool about as much as you think you'll need, 5 to 6 feet, something like that. And then once again, we're going to take the lighter and we're going to lightly melt the end of the Techflex, but this time we're going to quickly come in with the edge of our thumb and expand the diameter. That way, when we go to place it over the sleeve, like so, it doesn't have any issue getting over the USB cable. It's kind of cylindrical end. And then we're going to repeat the process where we pinch and pull. This will go pretty quickly. Techflex is usually easier to sleeve on than MDPC-X, and certainly easier than paracord. So we're just working our way across. Stretching the sleeve, watching as it reaches the end. Okay, and we've already reached the end. So this time, instead of exposing an inch, what we're going to do is we're just going to seal this right away, and then the other end will resolve itself later in the following steps. So now that we've got our Techflex lined up with the edge of our heat shrink, sleeve, we can add another piece of heat shrink. It'll be a little bit harder to get over because now the diameter has increased, but this is why we melt the end of the Techflex prior to adding it to the sleeve, and that's because we want this to be as easy as it can be. Okay, so that's in position. We're going to take our lighter, once again using the blue part of the flame, watching as it melts, rotating, and just generally keeping a very watchful eye on it. Okay, and pretty quickly it'll start to do it. Now watch this. Take your 3 fingers, pull. Haha, yeah, that one went well. So that is a little bit of magic that I developed to be able to remove both the heat shrink and the USB installation in a split second. And I use it for all of my cables. The trick though is make sure to only pull when you're applying the double sleeve, the Techflex. If you pull this off when you're doing the base sleeve, it'll be darn near impossible to sleeve on your Techflex because you'll have all of this braiding and foil insulation in the way. So anyways, now that we're nearly at the end of this, we're in the last stretches. Now, for this last stretch, put a piece of heat shrink right over the end that you were on and slide it towards the end. And then grip the sleeve and pull using a very tight grip to stretch the sleeve across the cable and get it to the final tension, which should be maximum tension. Now, we'll grip the piece of heat shrink, just so we have a little thing to hold, and then we'll use our very sharp scissors to very carefully and patiently snip all the way around this Techflex, trying to cut every single strand without cutting the USB cable. And then you can start to feel it come away, but I know that I haven't hit all of these strands yet, but now that every strand was cut, it just pops right off. Now you can slide the heat shrink over a little bit, and as a final safety measure to make sure that this Techflex is stretched as much as it can be, we're going to give it one final stretch. We'll get this over, slide that on, get it nice and centered, and then take the blue part of the flame, and then watch real closely for the moment of magic when I strip the USB cable and remove the heat shrink simultaneously. Okay, that's melted. Blow on it a couple of times and pull it right off like that using your 3 fingers. Next, we've got both of our ends, but they've got some insulation and shielding, or not insulation, they've got shielding around them. So what we're gonna do is pinch and take side to side, and we're basically trying to get 2 little bundles of wires over here. This is the shielding that helps with electronic interference and stuff that I'm not qualified to talk about. Anyways, so once you get it like this, you can take your flush cutters and carefully cut those right off. And the reason that we twist them into two little bundles is just so that the pieces don't go flying everywhere and make a mess. So we'll repeat that on both sides. Just kind of pinching and separating into two different sections, and then twisting in opposite directions. And then we'll give it a nice snip. And then we'll just go around, get a couple of these little small sections that, you know, as it's pulled, it's, you know, it's not gonna, they're not all gonna cut off super cleanly the very first time. So then you can take your very fine, sharp tweezers and slide it and find the seam for the foil shielding. And then you just push it through. You just make a little nick. And what that did was it now allows me to tear off the rest of the foil with almost no resistance. And we'll go in with the flush cutters, get that even more tidied up. Like so. And then we'll go over to the other side and expose those inner cores as well. Now, if you don't know the, you know, kind of what you'll be soldering on later, it may be wise to not pre-trim these 4 inner cores, but I know that I like to have about 3/8 of an inch on either end, so I'm gonna go ahead and trim those to length now. This will save me a step later on before I go to solder. So I'm just gonna line it up and snip at about 3/8 of an inch, and we'll repeat on this side. There we go. So 3/8 of an inch. I know that that'll work for an aviator, a USB C, a USB A, mini B, micro B, pretty much all of them. You can go a little bit longer, but this is the way that I like to do it. That's all for this one. Stay tuned for the next part in this series, where I cover coiling, baking, and reversing. Please be sure to like this video, subscribe, and check the bell icon to get notified when my next video is posted. For more cable content, follow me on Instagram and join my Discord server. As always, I'm Voxel, you're you, and together we can foster a supportive DIY community.